Well, hey everyone. Chris got me dancing to the theme song. Uh, Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris. And John is in small town purgatory. He does not have internet today. So
Yep.
we will carry on without him. Today we are doing an introduction to Claude Code. So last week, in case you missed it, we did an introduction to Claude Cowork, which is different from Claude Code, which is different from Claude Chat. Now, again, I like to reiterate these just to make sure I'm speaking correctly. So Claude Chat is what most people are using. You open up Claude, Anthropic's Claude, and get the chat box and say, today I want to write a post on this. And it says, great, happy to help. And it gives you a post. That's the chat feature. The co-work feature is available if you download Claude Desktop, and then you can access files from your local machine if you have proprietary information, if you have things that you want to keep more secret, or if you just have a lot of information and you can access skills and other agents that you build into uh, your system. You have all those prompts. That's what Claude Cowork is good for. So again, if you missed that episode, we did that last week. Go to trustinsights.ai/YouTube, go to the So What playlist and you'll find it. And then this week, we're talking about the third component, which is Claude Code, which, Chris, you've been using for a very long time. I personally have not dabbled into it. My coding extends to updating the HTML code on our website, but that's about as far as I've coded, but that's me personally. Um, as I've talked about before, I managed developers for a long time. Development and coding doesn't hold a lot of interest for me. I think my time is better suited doing other things. And Chris and I, we've decided that that's fine. I'm happy to support him with the coding and he's happy to do the coding. So, Chris, let's talk about Claude Code and what we need to know.
Well, first, let's make things really complicated. There's three versions of
Yay!
there's three versions of Claude Code. There's Claude Code on the web, which is where Anthropic has a little thing on, Claude.ai, and you can do Claude Code work there. You need to have a Git repository, which is a form of version control software, to do that there. There is Claude Code built into the desktop app, which is essentially almost identical to the one on the web. That is also, that can do similar to Cowork and access folders on your desktop. The most powerful version is Claude Code in your terminal or command line environment. That is the full powered, can do just about anything, has all the bells and whistles version of Claude Code. And that is the one that I use. It's the one that most people use. And it is the one that Anthropic realized when they were watching people using their tools. That is the one that everyone's using to do all these non-coding tasks, like planning vacations and stuff like that, because it's such a smart environment and there's so much you can do in it that you can't do in any other environment. So today, we're going to talk about the command line version of Claude Code. We're going to leave the other two off because, honestly, if that's what you want, use Cowork. Right?
Mhm.
That's the easiest way to put it.
So before you get too far, I want to pause for a second and talk about GitHub for a second, just to sort of give the overview. So you talked about how it's a repository for your code. In software development, one of the best practices of coding is to check your code in and out so that you're not basically coding against a live environment. And so you have code as basically just a series of if then statements in a text file document. And they all just say, if this happens, then do this. I want this to happen when this happens, like whatever it is. But there's a very specific language to, make all of that happen. But basically, when Chris is saying in GitHub, it's a repository, what you do is you put your code there. And then when you want to work on your code, you check it out or make a copy of it, pull it out, make your modifications, and then check it back in. That protects the code. It protects version control. And then it makes sure, again, that you're not updating things on your live environment and oopsie, we're in the middle of the live stream and we brought down all of StreamYard. We don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do it. So there's even, we can make this even more complicated. GitHub is a website and a company owned by Microsoft. The Git protocol, which is what GitHub is built on, was invented by Linus Torvalds, the inventor of Linux, like 30 years ago now. Git is installed or can be installed on pretty much any computer, and everyone using Claude Code or similar should use it for everything. Here's why. Version control software is basically unlimited undo. So when I was working on the LinkedIn, I'm almost done with it, but I'm working on the January 2026 version of our unofficial LinkedIn algorithm guide. I use Git with Claude Code, and I say, let's start a checkpoint. I'm going to make some edits. And then when I'm done with the edits, I check it back in. And then if I go, oh, crap, I deleted something that I didn't mean to, I can now just go to Claude Code and say, hey, bring this back. And it will go through the Git repo and say, found it. Here's the chapter you just accidentally deleted. And it's like back from the grave. Any content, images, video, audio, text, if it's on your computer and you're working on it and it's important, Git is another form of backup and you should use it.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure we acknowledged what it was and that we gave that sort of explainer, because as we're talking about software development, which is what we're talking about, having an understanding of what these other tools are in addition to Claude Code, I think is important, because yeah, you can write code in any system, but if you have no place to put it, no place to save it, no place to protect it, that is something you should definitely consider for your own sanity and governance.
Let's say for your own sanity more than anything else. Okay, so let's talk about Claude Code and getting set up and started with it. The first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to install it. Claude Code is a command line application, which means you need to be able to use the command line to install it. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, on how to use that in this show, because in our Analytics for Marketers Slack group, which is free, and you can join it at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, at 2 p.m., I'm going to be putting 6 prompts into the chat there. And what you do with these prompts is you go into any AI system you like, drop in the one you want. There's for Macs or Windows, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, depending on your level of skill. Beginner is, I don't know what a command line is. Intermediate is, I know what the command line is, I don't really use it. Advanced is, I live in the command line, and you probably don't need it. Drop the prompt that you don't know of your skill level and say, help. It says, I'm so excited to help you set up Claude Code on your Mac. What is it? Step 1. How to open the terminal and stuff like that. So this will walk you through interactively every step of the way. Hold your hand if you want it to get set up. That way, you're not like, I don't know where this Claude Code thing came from. We've got you covered.
And that is, again, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. If you're already a member, don't worry, you'll see it. If you're not a member, it is free to join. No payments. You just have to put up with us.
Yes, exactly. And me hijacking every thread.
Oh my goodness.
So this will get you started on Mac or Windows getting Claude Code installed. Once you install it, what Claude Code looks like is this. If you go to start a new terminal, you type in the word Claude, and you'll see this after you do the install process. This is what you see. This is Claude Code. So it is a terminal program. And now it's up to you what you want to do. Think of this like a brand new window, like a ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. The language model is waiting for you to do something. You now have to decide, what do I want to do with it? So I'm going to give you a short tour of what's in here and how to navigate around it, so that you can then say, okay, I at least know what buttons do what. The first and most important thing are slash commands. This is basically the buttons, because there is no UI. So slash commands are things like skills. And so you can do things like check your usage, how much of your quota, because you need to have a paid plan to use this on Network Claude. Pro, max 5, max 20 teams. This will tell you like, hey, here's how much of your quota that you've used. So for example, on the Trust Insights Claude account, we have used 83% of our weekly usage, which resets at 5 p.m. today. So we've used almost all of our quota for this week. This is a good thing, by the way. It's use it or lose it on the usage. So, it always comes down to like the day, because it resets today. The day of, I'm like, what else can I do today that maybe is a little bit frivolous just to use that quota? There was a funny analysis somebody did on Threads. If you were to use the API versus your subscription, how much would it cost? So we paid the $200 a month plan for Trust Insights. If this usage level was consistent throughout the month, Katie, guess how much we would be spending in API calls?
I would at least add a 0 to the monthly bill.
$2,700 a month.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. So the Claude plans are a great deal. So you can see just sort of like how checking in on Claude, how it's doing, how it's configured. So one of the more useful commands is the command called model. This lets you choose which of Anthropic's 3 models you want to use. In general, if you are doing stuff like summarization or basic document writing, Sonnet, the mid-level model, is pretty good. It's pretty smart, and it's very, very efficient. So if you're on one of the lower paid plans, you'll use up less of your monthly and weekly, or less of your weekly and hourly quota if you use Sonnet than if you use Opus. Opus is the highest level plan. It is the smartest. It is the most expensive, and it chews up through your quota the fastest. And then the last one is Haiku, which is you really only want to use that for things like summarization because it's extremely fast and really dumb by comparison.
So for those of you watching and those, catching the replay, I am really glad, and this is me personally, that there is a transcript for this video because you definitely lost me a little bit there. And I don't, you don't need to go back through it because there's a transcript. But I mean, that's a lot of information already. I'm sort of already feeling a little overwhelmed. The one thing that I got was the slash command, which if you use other software like Slack, for example, slash Giphy or slash whatever, like it's a very basic function. And so I'm trying not to be overwhelmed and intimidated by what you're showing me by trying to see what resonates and things that I'm like, oh, I understand that in this other context here. The different model types, at least I can see on your screen, it gives you a little bit of an overview of which one to use. So that's helpful. But yeah, I'm ready to see what it can do.
Okay. Well, we can't do that because there's still a bit more prep work that we should understand about the application. One of the other things that it has plugins. If you've used WordPress or other software things where there's a plugin that adds functionality to your app, Claude Code supports plugins. And there are, if you type in the word plugin, which is a slash command, it'll take you to the plugin marketplace and store. It out of the box, it comes installed with Anthropic's official plugins. They're all free, which is nice. Be very, very, very careful if you install any marketplace other than Anthropic's because it's other people's code. They're basically installing code on your machine, and you may not want to trust them. Inside here, there's 50 different plugins you can choose from. The only one that I would suggest most people will get the most use out of is one called Superpowers. So if I go into here and I look at all the different plugins, I can scroll and they all have little descriptions that tell you what they are. There's one in here called Superpowers. This one is the one to install for pretty much everybody because it has built-in things like tools that can help you do brainstorming, help you review stuff, help you improve things. And it's smart enough to know in a conversation, oh, you're doing some brainstorming. Let me help you with your brainstorming. So it has a lot of very useful functions that are not just for coders. A lot of the other tools are code related.
Is there any way to make this terminal screen a little bit bigger? It is really hard to read.
Let's see if I can change this to Mm, I would
And
have
with
to
this is
start a
something
new
we should have
window.
done pre-show. We know this. Uh, but it is
Uh,
live.
let's see. Make it bigger.
Oh,
Now
that's
it's
so much. Yeah.
bigger.
That's it. That's better because at least now I can see, install plugins,
Right.
Atlassian, superpowers, explanatory output style plugin. Okay. Yeah. Oh, Notion. Oh, and I think that again, that's really helpful to know that that kind of stuff is available. But Chris, to your point, it is definitely just be aware that there could be a cost associated, or it may not be like an official plugin, and you could just be exposing your code to anyone.
Yeah. Some ones that would be very popular for marketers. If you are a design shop that has access to Figma, the graphic design software, there's a Figma plugin. Claude can then control Figma and help you make designs, which is pretty cool. Again, if you use Jira, you can connect your Claude Code directly to Jira. So if you are a Jira shop, very, very useful. I talked about superpowers already. Notion is in here. Another one that is very popular is Slack. If you want to be able to send Slack messages from Claude, and so on and so forth. There is also Asana. If you use the Asana task management system, you can use Asana right from Claude in here, and a few others. But the plugins add functionality to Claude, and they give it additional capabilities. The last two things, and I promise this is it for the basic prep work. The last two things that Claude Code has that are not available in other systems are agents and skills. An agent is something that you make, or you can use ones that are pre-installed that come with plugins. But an agent is something you do that is specific to the way that you do things. So I'll give you a real simple example. Yeah, I have several of our agents in here. Actually, do I? Let me double check. No, I do not. I will show that instead. Okay, so one of our agents is the voice of the customer agent. This takes an ideal customer profile and makes it available as a little @ command. You can say @VOC to say, hey, voice of the customer, using the Trust Insights ICP, evaluate this document. And it'll write and return an audit that says, hey, as your customer, this sucks. I don't want you to do this to me. Or I would love to buy that. That's amazing. I would love that. So agents allow you to perform very specific vertical tasks like the voice of the customer. Probably the one that everybody knows, or at least people who watch our live stream know and are familiar with, is the co-CEO, right? So this is, make this larger here. This is a virtual version of Katie that says, here's who Katie is. And this co-CEO will act as Katie. The 5P framework is in here. So anytime that I'm working in Claude Code, I can go @co-CEO and it will say, I'm here to help, and then immediately trash my plans.
I mean, yes, but I like to think of it more as providing necessary structure to what could possibly be an unwieldy shiny object.
Exactly. So agents are they're almost like apps, right? So think of an agent like an app where you just, I want my co-CEO to come in. I want my co-CFO to come in. I want my developmental editor to come in and do these things. And you can invoke an agent by its @name within Claude Code's chat. You can also have access to what are called skills. These are almost like macros. If you're familiar with like Excel macros and stuff, that is a predefined routine. For example, one of my favorite ones is called fact check. Fact check says, hey, you can say, hey, @Claude Code, fact check this document. And it will run this skill that I built that says, okay, I'm going to look at the supporting documentation provided. And if I see you making claims that I don't see in the supporting documentation, I'm going to go search the web for credible sources to kind of corroborate, and it will then produce an audit report saying, here's the sources that are grounded in the truth, and here's the crap you made up. Right? If you are doing anything with AI, with generative AI, having a fact check skill to force the tool to check its own work is invaluable. So I would recommend having something like that as well as other processes. So that's the very, very express tour of Claude Code, the basic setup. Plugins, particularly superpowers, slash commands, agents, which are like mini apps, and skills, which are like, frequently used macros. In general, if you find yourself giving the same prompt over and over again, that is an opportunity to say, you know what? I keep saying this. Maybe we should turn this either into a skill or an agent.
I have a question, and I am eager to get started, and so last year we talked about MCPs. So the model context protocol. And
Correct.
my understanding of an MCP was that it basically was the connection between an LLM and third-party data, third-party tools. So it was like you had to build something to say, here's my Claude instance and here's my Notion instance. But now it sounds like, yes, MCPs are still relevant for some people, but this could, if you are skilled with it, could replace the need for building a separate MCP. Or is this an MCP? I know, I probably shouldn't have asked. This is gonna derail everything.
No, it's fine. It depends. So an MCP, the way we always explain it is an MCP is an API for AI, so that it's a very specific way for it to talk to a specific data source.
Mhm.
A lot of the things that are shown in here as connectors in regular Claude or as plugins here are actually MCPs because
Okay.
they connect, and you can build your own. One that I am almost done with, and I can briefly show it off but it's not 100% functional yet, is one called co-blogging. And co-blogging is an MCP that I'm building right now that lives inside the Trust Insights website. When it's done, I'll be able to connect it to Claude Code or Claude Cowork, and then Katie, you will be able to say, hey, go to the services pages and make these changes for me. And
Yes.
Claude will understand. Okay, you want me to connect to the Trust Insights MCP, and I will go and do those things. And so that's it. Today, if whatever you're doing has an API, Claude Code could potentially write the code to talk to the API directly, or it can help you build an MCP if it's something you're going to be doing a lot. Like I foresee Katie talking to the Trust Insights website a lot, so that really does need to be an MCP.
It does, because it's something that I am very slowly working away at a little bit more manually. So, no, I was just curious because all of these terms come and go so quickly. And, it sort of struck me as you were describing it. I'm like, it sounds like that thing we talked about, which was an MCP. So let me just sort of double check like where that terminology falls within this, because I feel like for a lot of people, they hear about this new thing, they work really hard to try to understand it, and by the time they understand it, it's old news and something else has happened. So I just wanted to sort of connect those dots a little bit.
Exactly. So what do you do with this thing? Well,
Great question.
first, you'll want to learn just the ins and outs of how to navigate to folders on your computer inside of a command line, because like with Claude Cowork, Claude Code should run in specific folders. Please do not just give it access to your hard drive. Bad things will happen. So for today, I have created a simple folder called live stream. And this Claude Code I started inside the live stream folder. So it has access only to what's in here. And as with Cowork from last week, I create my same 8 folders that I personally like to start with because I know what they mean. And you should have your own governance for how you do things. Some of the easiest use cases for Claude Code start with things like the connectors. So as an example, I connected it to Asana, and I said, hey, add to my to-do list, I need to make a LinkedIn post to promote Katie's new AI ready assessment. And it said, oh, okay, I'll add this. And it assigned it to Katie. I'm like, no, that's my task, not Katie's. It says, okay, got it, fixed it. But I also said, and inside the Asana folder on my desktop, I have a little template that's called my daily briefing. And so when I get into Trust Insights in the morning, the first thing I do is open up Claude Code in that folder and say, give me my daily briefing. And it looks through my Asana task list. It looks at what's due in the next 3 days and says, hey, Chris, here's your daily briefing of what's coming up so that you can plan ahead accordingly. And I can look at it and go, no, that's not due. That's not due until next week. Or, oh, crap, that's due. And I can talk back to Claude and say, make these changes to Asana so that it can just go off and do things and stuff. And it will adjust it. So we used to have this, I used to have this just pile, this gigantic mess in my Asana. Since I installed the Asana MCP inside of Claude Code, gone, completely gone. It's all organized. It's in the right projects. It's assigned. I even found out inside Asana, there's a way to say, here's how long this project will take or this task will take. And so I said to Claude, give me a list of all my tasks where I don't have a time, how much time I think a project is going to take. And it says, great, here's 120 tasks that have no time. So I get out this guy, my phone, turn on the voice memo app and start reading down the list saying, oh, this is going to take this long. This is going to take this long. This is going to take this long. And I just dictate that and put the transcript right into Claude Code, and it starts to update the Asana. Now it's going to have this task will take this amount of time, so that if Katie wanted to use the workload feature, now she has realistic estimates of how long a task is going to take. And I don't have to click 80,000 times inside Asana to do that. I can just dictate it to Claude Code and it does the thing. So this is one of my favorite basic use cases for this tool. It is such a good interface, a natural language interface to for me, a not a natural management tool.
And when, Chris, you were telling me about this morning, I was sort of joking, like, whatever works. But honestly, it's a nice bridge from, so one of the things that we've, talked about before is we've struggled to get the team consistently using any kind of a project management or planning tool because we all work so differently. And so if putting a Claude Code connector on top of our project management tool gets you to use it, great. I am happy. I am happy as a clam. I am happy as whatever other kind of mollusk can be happy. I just want you to use the thing so that we can do planning. And but the point being is that I feel like these kinds of tools, these large language models, all of these different connectors open up the possibility to meet people where they are versus trying to continually to force people to use things that just doesn't align with their working style. If it means that Chris is going to keep his Asana updated and accurate and, whatever, it makes it easier for me, great, whatever works. Someone is asking, do you find that Claude overestimates time? Chris, I think what you're saying is that you were the one estimating, and yes, you do underestimate time.
Yes. And Claude dramatically overestimates. Like if you say, hey, Claude, do your best guess, it'll like, oh, this task will take you 7 hours. I'm like, dude, that's a 5-minute task. And then the reality is it's probably an hour-long task. It got to meet it in the middle. One of the big cautions with these tools is executive function is planning, organization, decision-making, and problem solving. The 4 big, we call it pods, plan, organize, decide, solve. Generally, you want to be doing that. If you are letting it do that, you are de-skilling yourself, right? You are letting AI do the high-level thinking for you. And then at that point, your company does not need you because they can just use Claude instead. So in general, with these tools, just be very cautious that you are doing plan, organize, decide, and solve, and let it do grunt work like, oh, update my Asana, right? That is not an executive function that needs me to do any heavy thinking. Deciding when should I do this task or how long it's going to take, yes, that requires me. Second basic thing that these tools are, Claude Code in particular, is really, really good at, better than Google, is deep research. So for a long time, I've used Gemini's deep research, and I like it. It's good at what it does. Sometimes, though, I will give it a very specific prompt because we use the Trust Insights Casino framework, which you can get at trustinsights.ai/casino. This format is incredibly detailed in terms of how we want outputs. So I gave Gemini a deep research task, and I said, I want you to tell me how to do how to build micro dramas, right? The micro dramas are it's a super hot new format, 90-second, micro-sized, bite-sized videos. I want to know how to make these for myself just because I can.
No, I'm still stuck on I don't know what a micro drama is. Like, is it like a novella? Is it you're supposed to have a plot? Like, I don't want to derail things. What I will say is if you want your version of the casino prompt, go to trustinsights.ai/casino, and I will ask my silly questions of Chris in our free Slack community, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where derailing things is often encouraged.
Exactly. So this is the casino prompt that I put together. I said microdramas, short form video content, typically 60 to 90 seconds per episode, serialized, and so on and so forth. Right? That's the context. The audience is me. Here's the scope. Here's the intent. I want to know these things. And here's the outcome. This is what I expect. Format fundamentals, structural blueprint, storytelling playbook, design pattern catalog, anti-pattern warning guide, AI production guide, production checklist, and reference examples. That's what I want from the research. I gave this to Google, and it came back and it said, here's the structural blueprint, right? And this is pretty good. It's about 5,700 words. It's not exact. And it did some things I specifically told it not to do. It gave me a lot of filler content. I'm like, I don't want filler content. I want a manual. I want a manual that I can walk through, and so I can build one of these things. And it's sort of ruminating about the evolution of the format. Like, I don't care. I just want. So I took the exact same casino format. I went into Claude Code and I said, read the recipe, right? Read the research prompt and do it. I'll come back later. Because it has its own built-in web search agents, because it can run 50 agents at a time. Actually, it can run more than that, but 50 at a time is a safe number. I just give it the prompt and it spits out a report that A, is twice as long as Google's, but B, more importantly, exactly follows the requirements. Exactly. And so if you're going to be doing something that requires very strict guardrails on output, and you're using Claude Code, you should switch to the Opus model because it's the most precise and the smartest, and say, this is what you must do, and you will get better task adherence from it. You'll also get a better quality report too. Then, remembering we were talking about agents and skills, you deploy the fact check skills. They fact check this thing, and it will go back and check its work. It will go back and essentially question itself. When I did this on the Gemini report, 30% of the Gemini report was hallucinated. Uh-oh.
Yeah. But it all makes sense now why you like Claude Code so much, and why you don't like managing people. You don't like that gray area of, well, I told you how to do it. But yeah, but I did it this way. No, I told you exactly how to do it. Yeah, I kind of did it that way. And that typically lends itself to people not being people managers. But if you're someone who has that sort of precision in mind, I think it's a really good distinction between, using a large language model chat feature versus using something like a Claude Code where you will get that precision back. So I think that that's a really good distinction.
Yep. So here's the prompt chain. I said, you're going to perform the research task in this file, and you'll output all of your work to the output folder. Use the brainstorming skill to read through it and develop a plan. Then ask me questions if you need to. If you don't need to, do the plan. And it loaded the skill, the brain power skill. Remember, I told you about superpowers. And it said, I'm going to use it. I have a questions for you. And here's my question, right? And it asked me the question. I gave it the answer. And it said, do you know which ones you want to focus on? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to report. It says, great, I have it. And then you can see it kicked off 24 web search agents that went off and did their own thing, brought back all the data, synthesized it, and wrote the report and gave me a nice summary and things like that. And because I had strict instructions to say, like, you have to cite every single source, you have to take notes on it. It gave me what I wanted. So this is another great non-coding use of Claude Code, because you can see it's using agents. The thing that's going to be hardest for people is to sit down and think about, what does the recipe look like, right? So in this case, my recipe is the casino prompt framework. Sometimes it's the race framework. Maybe it's the rappel framework, but some kind of prompt framework that's not just, what's the best way to do this, right? That's a terrible prompt. If this prompt here is 1,000 words long, because I took the time to think through, here's what I want. This morning, I was doing some stuff that was legal adjacent, because I'm not a lawyer and I can't give legal advice, but I was doing legal adjacent work for a client. And I said, in the requirements, here's exactly what's allowed. Here's exactly what's not allowed. Here's the websites you're allowed to use for research. Here's the ones you're not allowed to use for research. If you've ever done this in Google Gemini, you have seen it come back and say, I use this website. I'm like, I told you not to do that. Like, very often it's like, I pulled this Reddit thread. I'm like, I specifically told you not to use Reddit for this task. In this one instance, I said, you may not use content from this website after this date. And for this particular client asks, and in the trace, in the notes, Claude said, I found this and I disregarded it per your instructions. Like, that is what I asked you to do. So the third and final use case that we're going to cover today is coding.
I am shocked.
Claude Code is the best coding tool available right now for most use cases. And the thing that's cool about it is you don't have to be a coder as long as you have the vocabulary to describe what you want. So if you're thinking, I'm going to show you an example. This is something that Katie came up with last week. We have a weekly just sort of touch base just to see how each other is doing. And last week she's like, I kind of want to do this thing. So what she did was she sat down and wrote out a requirements document of, here's what I want. And then we had a conversation about it, about a 45-minute conversation where I asked her questions like, well, what about this? What about this? Should it do this? The requirements document plus the transcript were the basis for Claude Code. I said, okay, we're going to build this thing. It's got to live on our website. So from a vocabulary perspective, it has to run the language PHP. Our website uses PHP 8.4. So obviously that's another technical requirement. So the first thing I did was I took the transcript and I took Katie's document and I opened up Claude Code and I said, let's build a full product requirements document. One of the secrets to Claude Code and coding tools in general, but one of the secrets to Claude Code is the more chances you give it to think, the better it's going to do. So I could have just given it those documents, said go. But by saying, let's build a requirements document, it gave it another pass to think through. Oh, well, what about this? And because the brainstorming skill was there, it asked me questions like, well, if Katie wants this, what about this? What about this? And I said, ask your co-CEO.
But I think, and this is the link for anyone. This is live now. If anyone wants to try it out, trustinsights.ai/AI readiness assessment. The thing that worked and the thing that we always talk about is we went into this knowing exactly what we wanted. Sure, there were some clarifying questions that the system needed to ask, but when I gave this to you, Chris, when I gave you the document, you immediately understood what it was that I wanted to do. I didn't say specifically this has to be the interface. Like, to me, that's not as important as this is the purpose of what this thing is meant to do. This is who it's for. This is the process that I want them to go through to take this. Here's the platform that we need to be using, and this is how we know it worked. Performance. It's almost like I used the 5P framework to do my thinking, which I absolutely did. But then what I handed Chris was a fully baked document, including like, here's a letter from the CEO as to why this is important. Here's all the questions. Here's the exact scoring mechanisms. Here's how things are tallied. Like, I went through every detail to the point where I said, okay, but I just can't build it myself. Can you help me? And he's like, absolutely. You've told me exactly what you wanted to do. So the building it won't take that long.
Yep. So once we had that, the only other piece that I needed to make it work is deep research, specifically deep research commissioned for this kind of project. So I gave Claude the deep research for casino formatted framework saying, we're going to be building this kind of application. And it built me a nice rules file that says, these are all the rules and patterns and anti-patterns we're going to use. I coded none of this, zero. I coded none of this, but I asked it to take this, this project and write out what you think the technicals, the inner workings of the project are going to be. With those things, so I have my orientation, I have my rules file, I have the transcript from Katie and I's conversation, I have Katie's document. It then went and just built. So it asked me a few more questions, and then it launched its agents, and it went off and did a fantastic job. Here's why you would do this as a marketer or as a non-coder. This, and we have a bunch of other tools. In fact, there's another one that we're testing for one more day called AI View that looks at a URL and then gives you an assessment of it. Both of those are available, although that one's going to get turned off tomorrow. AI can summarize everything, right? If it's a static document, like, put up a new blog post, AI can summarize it. The web doesn't need another summary, or that doesn't need another blog post. What Claude Code enables for you and your company and your content marketing is interactive content, content that people can enjoy and get benefit out of, but that AI can't summarize. When an AI crawler looks at this page, it sees the quiz questions. It doesn't fill out the form. It doesn't answer the questions, and it doesn't get the assessment at the end that says, wow, great job, or dude, you need a little help. And so that's why you as a marketer or a non-coder would want to use a tool like Claude Code, so that you have an idea for something that's interactive. You can say, let's bring this to life.
And that was exactly what the use case was, because I knew I wanted it to be something interactive, not just a Google form, which it would have worked as a Google form, but nothing would really stand out about it in terms of people wanting to respond to it, in terms of ease of use. Google Forms are okay. They definitely serve a purpose. But I really want it to be something that it felt like a part of the website and people could interact with. So again, if you want to try it out for yourself, go to trustinsights.ai/readiness-assessment. What it does is it will just tell you how far along in your AI readiness journey you are.
And on the back end, one of the things Katie wanted to do was, how do we get this into our HubSpot? Well, guess what HubSpot has? APIs. HubSpot has a gazillion and a half APIs. What can Claude do really capably? Write code for APIs. So you don't see it in the front end, but in the back end, this has connectors to a bunch of different systems, which means that Claude wrote that. We gave it the instructions, and we gave it the credentials. We gave it all of the pieces and stuff like that. And it built that plumbing for us. But now, in terms of orchestration, no one has to figure, I got to copy and paste data from here to here, or I got to move this from here. Nope. The system itself does it because Claude Code built it, because we thought it through and said in the requirements, this has to talk to HubSpot.
Right.
If it has an API, Claude Code can write to it. You just have to have the documentation.
And the documentation for APIs do exist. You just have to know to look for them. So I'm not someone who codes against an API, but I can at least do a simple web search to say, point me to the documentation for HubSpot's API. The documentation exists. Many companies don't gatekeep that information. You just have to look for it. You have to know to look for it. Because if you have that, then you can give it to your large language model and say, help me make sense of this. What do I do with it?
Yep. Last example of something I use Claude Code for. This is from the first of my personal newsletters this year. I had it write a trashy romance novel just because it was the day of reset. It was the holidays, so we used like 16% of our quota for the week. I'm like, well, we got to use that quota for something. And so, exact same process. I have documents. I have a writer's Bible for how to write this kind of novel from deep research. I have a blueprint for this kind of thing. I have a plot and and stuff like that I had in mind. I had a writing style of how to write this kind of book. And it went through and it generated first the overall outline, and then the chapter by chapter outline, and then individual chapter outlines, and then wrote each chapter. And then there are, as we were talking earlier, there are skills like writing style analysis and an editor and a writer agent. So the writing agent writes and the editing agent comes in and says, you didn't meet the requirements. I'm going to fix this up. It even was able to, with a good recipe, generate the cover. Generate the prompt that I could then give to Nano Banana to make the cover of the book. Now, this is a silly example of how to use Claude Code for a non-coding project. However, it illustrates that you can use these pieces for just about any content creation task.
Clarifying question. So you just said using Claude Code for a non-coding task. Could you also use Claude Cowork to do the same thing?
You absolutely could. You would need to
Okay.
provide the agents manually because they don't support it yet.
Okay.
But they're nothing more than prompts.
Right. And so the way that we have it, so I use Claude Cowork as of last week since our live stream on it. But basically, the agents are text files that can be referenced. So it's just a matter of your comfort level with that kind of thing and how you're using it. So I just wanted to sort of ask that question because as you're describing it, it occurred to me, but that seems more suited for Claude Cowork. But the difference is how the system gets the information.
Right. And how many agents it can deploy. So when
Got it.
I did this, if you look in the chapters list here, this
Mhm.
book is 32 chapters long. I told Claude Code, launch up to 50 agents at a time. And when it went to write the chapters, it launched 32 different agents and wrote each chapter all simultaneously. So instead of waiting 8.5 hours for all of this labor, it just banged it out all in about 15 minutes. And then the editor agents, it launched 32 editor agents. Each one went and edited each chapter and so on and so forth. So it was a very rapid process because the agents part of Claude Code allows it to scale way more than Cowork can right now.
Gotcha. Well, the next time you have the quota to fill, I would request in the genre of murder mystery. And if there is, a family that has been keeping secrets for decades, if the book starts with you think you know who the murderer was, but by the end you're like, oh my gosh, it was totally that other person over there. And you have one person who's following the breadcrumbs throughout the entire story who is getting too close and they might be next. And, maybe they're a little too pushy. And you're like, why do you have to be so pushy? But that's the part of their whole personality and why they're getting the answer to the question. So if you want to use the quota to write that book, I'll let you know if it's any good.
Duly noted. So to wrap up for today, Claude Code is the third piece of the Claude ecosystem. And again, it comes in 3 flavors. The flavor that we recommend you use is the command line version. The things you need to know about it is that it operates locally, but it can connect to just about anything. You need to understand the basics of / commands, how to install plugins, what agents are and when to use them, what skills are and when to use them, and then critically, do your homework before you even turn it on. What knowledge blocks do you need? What ideal customer profiles do you need? What background information and deep research do you need? Because it is like the fairy tale genie, all AIs, but especially Claude Code. It will do what you ask, even if what you ask is stupid. So do your homework up front, do all of the planning, do the 5 Ps. And then once you've done all the planning, set Claude Code off and you will get amazing results.
And if you want to gauge your AI readiness and get a fun score and see what bucket you fall into, you can go to trustinsights.ai/AI-readiness dash assessment. It's easy for me to say. Just look on the screen. But I think it was a great use case for Claude Code because historically, we just did not have the resources to create the things that we wanted to create without, we're a small company. We don't have the budget to bring on external contractors to do these kinds of things. We would love to. We would love to not be the ones in the trenches. But for now, it's good enough. It's getting us to where we need it to be. So I'm really excited about that.
Exactly. So I would encourage folks to give it a try. Again, the prompts for getting it set up are going to be in the Analytics for Marketers Slack group in about 10 minutes. And you'll be able to enjoy them there and just get it all set up for yourself. So that's going to do it for this week's live stream. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you all on the next one.
Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.